Okay, brothers and sisters, we're picking it right back up. We're going to pick it up at the verse 33, 78, Psalm 78, verse 33. Therefore, their days did he consume in vanity, and their years in trouble. When he slew them, then they sought him, and they returned and inquired early after Yahweh. After Yahweh got to slamming these curses on these folks and busting their heads like they needed to get busted, you know what I'm saying? They hurry up and ran back then. And they remembered that Yahweh was their rock, and the high God their redeemer. Nevertheless, they did flatter him with their mouth, and they lied unto him with their tongues, for their heart was not right with him, neither were they steadfast in his covenant. But he, being full of compassion, forgave their iniquity, and destroyed them not. Yea, many a time turned he his anger away. He did not stir up all his wrath, for he remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passeth away and cometh not again. How often did they provoke him in the wilderness and grieve him in the desert? Dealing with niggas. Can you remember? These is niggas out here, man. People joking, playing, don't want to listen, testing folks. Oh, can he do this? You know, these is niggas that the Creator had to deal with. He didn't have to deal with you, but he made you in his image to do a purpose. And oh, you gonna do what you was created to do because the Creator said, oh, his creation was good. So you gonna do what you supposed to do, or you gonna be tortured. Either you gonna be Yahweh or be forced to the garbage can. And that's exactly what it is. All right, now back to verse 41. We still on Psalm 78:41. Yeah, they turned back and tempted Yahweh and limited the Holy One of Israel. They remembered not his hand nor the day when he delivered them from the enemy, how he had wrought his signs in Egypt and his wonders in the field of Zon, and had turned their rivers into blood and their floods that they could not drink. He sent divers sorts of flies among them which devoured them, and frogs which destroyed them. He gave also their increase unto the caterpillar, and their labor unto the locust. He destroyed their vines with hail, and their sycamore trees with frost. He gave up their cattle also to the hail, and their flocks to hot thunderbolts. He cast upon them the fierceness of his anger, wrath, and indignation, and trouble, by sending evil angels among them. He made a way to his anger. He spared not their soul from death, but gave their life over to the pestilence, and smote all the firstborn in Egypt, the chief of their strength in the tabernacles of Ham, but made his own people to go forth like sheep, and guided them in the wilderness like a flock. And he led them on safely, so that they feared not, but the sea overwhelmed their enemies. And he brought them to the border of his sanctuary, even to this mountain which his right hand had purchased. He cast out the heathen also before them, and divided them inheritance by line, and made the tribes of Israel to dwell in their tents. Yet they tempted and provoked the Most High God, and kept not his testimonies. These is niggas. Remember what Aaron told Moses, hey, you know these people, they are set on mischief. Man, these folks is fixed on playing games, causing embarrassing moments, little petty shit, petty stuff going on. You know what I'm saying? Just little tricks, little games, not listening, cracking jokes, running around. This is who the Creator had to deal with. All the time. We've always been the same. That's why this day today, after this punishment he heaped up on us this time, he took our memory from us, totally cut us off, because you niggas ain't gonna, even though we still got the plan for character, but when the Creator stepped back on the scene and we realize this new life, we know this old life must die, and all of America and everything we did in America cannot come with us. It's gonna be just like when we left from Egypt, kept talking about we don't want to return to Egypt, and everybody kept ending up dead. So back to the scriptures. We're going to pick it right back up at Psalm 78, verse 57. But turned back and dealt unfaithfully like their fathers. They were turned aside like a deceitful bow, for they provoked him to anger with their high places, and moved him to jealousy with their graven images. When Yahweh heard this, he was wroth and greatly abhorred Israel, so that he forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent which he placed among them, and delivered his strength into captivity, and his glory into the enemy's hand. He gave his people over also unto the sword, and was wroth with his inheritance. The fire consumed their young men, and their maidens were not given to marriage. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. Then Yahweh awaked as one out of sleep, and like a mighty man that shouteth by reason of wine, and he smote his enemies in the hinder hinder parts. He put them to a perpetual reproach. Moreover, he refused the tabernacle of Joseph, and chose not the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Judah, the Mount Zion which he loved. And he built his sanctuary like high palaces, like the earth which he hath established forever. He chose David also his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds, from following the ewes great with young. He brought him to feed Jacob his people and Israel his inheritance. So he fed them according to the integrity of his heart, and guided them by the skillfulness of his hands. So this is who Yahweh saved, who he kept left. It was the children of Judah. He delivered the Israelites out in captivity 200 years before we soon followed suit like some niggas, but let's break down some more scriptures to back this up. Okay, we are going to now take this to the slave trade book, because remember, Yahweh reserved Judah for himself. So now we are going to take this to the slave trade book, a history book, to tie in more facts from the Bible into history through the encyclopedias and dictionaries, which is the most credible books that we could look in on this earth and in this nation. Now, the history book that I will be dealing with today is called The History of Slavery and the Slave Trade, written by Blake. What a great author. Thank you, Blake. You really helped my job out. Okay, now, let's define slave trade so we know what this book is dealing with right here that we're about to go into. Slave trade. Traffic in slaves, specifically or only the transportation of black Africans to America for sale as slaves. That's the definition of slave trade out the Book of Understanding. It says the transportation of black Africans to America for sale as slaves, specifically the black Africans. So now we can go into this slave trade book and see that this book only talk about the blacks who came to America, Africans as they call them. Okay, I am going to pick this up in the slave trade, the history of slavery and the slave trade, written by Blake, on page 21. Okay. Egypt is represented in the book of Genesis as a market for slaves, and in Exodus as famous for the severity of its servitude. Tyre and Zidon, as we learn from the book of Joel, were notorious for the persecution of this trade. So we see the author Blake, a very wise and understanding man, shall I say. He said he learned out the book of Joel that Tyre and Zidon was notorious for the persecution of our slave trade in America. So let's get the book of Joel and see what the author Blake came up with in the slave trade book about the blacks of America. Joel chapter 3. We're going to pick it up at verse 4. Yeah, what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon? The same ones in the slave trade book where Blake said he got the information from the book of Joel. And all the coast of Palestine, will you render me a recompense? And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head? Because you have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians, that you might remove them far from their border. So the Creator comes in and is asking Tyre and Zidon, will you repay? Are you going to repay me? And even if you try to repay me, you know what I'm saying, I'm going to return it right back on your head. Why? Because you took all this gold and this silver and you carried them into your temples. And plus the children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians. Then he tell you right here, Psalm 78. But, he said, moreover, Yahweh refused the tabernacle of Joseph, and chose not the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Judah, the Mount Zion which he loved. That's who went to Greece. was the Mount Zion, Judah, of which Yahweh